The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everybody and welcome to our webinar. Many thanks for joining us. Today we're going to be talking about the benefits of moving to the cloud with Citrix Endpoint Management and how Citrix can help you move. Our presenters today are Justin Mader, a Senior Product Manager who has been with Citrix for nearly 10 years and has worked with our mobility solution for the majority of that time. His primary focus is around our endpoint management cloud offering and working with customers to successfully migrate them to the cloud. We also have Jonathan Campos, Senior Product Marketing Manager, who has been with Citrix for 5 years and primarily focused on our mobility and networking solutions. You have all joined this webinar in listen-only mode, but you can ask a question at any time in the console and we'll be answering them during the Q&A at the end. This webinar will run for 45 minutes and we'll be sharing the recording of this webinar afterwards. So now I am going to hand over to Jonathan, who will be our first presenter today.
Amy, thank you very much, and thanks everyone for joining. I want to again thank everyone for joining this webinar where we're going to talk about the Endpoint Management Migration Service, a great service to really help you get to cloud quicker. And we're going to start off with our first slide here by talking about the strong breadth and depth that Citrix Endpoint Management in the cloud has to offer. As many of you may already have on the on-premise version of Citrix Endpoint Management, you may see that some of the endpoints that you have on this screen here may not necessarily be supported on your on-premise deployment. And the main reason behind that, of course, has to do with a lot of the different microservices that we can take advantage of with the cloud. Of course, we know that cloud has a lot of benefits that allow us to really take advantage of different features that are available to help us kind of run things in a different way. And you'll see that, of course, with what you're used to actually working with day in and day out, Android and Android Enterprise, iOS, Windows 10. In addition to that, we also have Chrome OS, and along with Mac OS, and of course, the Citrix Ready Workspace Hub and their assistants that are available to that. So you have what you're used to with respect to the on-premise environment and have a little bit more with cloud. And when we move on to the next slide, you'll see that the one, there we go, perfect. One thing that you'll see is that with Citrix Workspace, together with Citrix Endpoint Management, we can tie a better together solution and really improve mobile productivity. And you'll see that with Citrix Workspace and Citrix Endpoint Management together in the cloud, we're really enhancing that whole holistic approach, allowing you to really take advantage of some of the features that you have in cloud, such as analytics, such as, of course, the workspace in general, and tying that all together to have a clear zero trust and true zero trust story end to end. I'm gonna go ahead and go over to the next slide where we're gonna hand things off to Justin, where he's gonna talk about the reference architecture. And here we'll go into understanding what the infrastructure in the cloud looks like once you migrate over to it. Justin?
Yeah, thanks, John. Hello, everyone. Yeah, so a high-level view, here's a reference architecture from our cloud platform perspective. So it's broken into two parts. We have the customer's data center, which is on the left-hand side, just as you have had today with your on-premise environment. And on the right-hand side is our actual endpoint management service that's cloud-hosted. As you can see from here, everything actually transverses your Citrix Cloud platform. This is your middle ground. This is how you access your console, as well as set up your cloud connectors, which is a requirement for moving to cloud. That's how you're able to access your LDAP, PKI, and things like that, which we'll talk about in a few later slides. But in cloud, we have, you can kind of see from the screenshot here, we have a complete control plane, data plane separation. So what does that mean? So from a control plane perspective, you have your device out in the internet, on Wi-Fi, wherever it may be. Hopefully, for a majority of people, it's going to be at home. You have your device out there. Control traffic is your MDM and initial MDM enrollment, MAM enrollment, as well as policy push, things like that, things that are through our MDM channel to the service directly. And then we have our data traffic. Our data traffic, just like it is today with an on-premise environment, our data traffic is that micro VPN traffic or the MAM traffic, exchange traffic, web traffic. All that continues to go from the device, wherever it may be located, to your on-premise Citrix gateway. That gateway, whether you're doing the migration or you're doing a net new build in cloud, that gateway always resides on-premise. There is no data traffic traversing the cloud itself. So customers that have GDPR concerns, PII data concerns, and where it's going, where it's being held. You can see here we have complete control plane, data plane separation in cloud from this perspective. So let's take a step onto the right-hand side there. You have your Citrix Endpoint Management service on the right-hand side. Again, everything's set up in availability sets. And you can see the CEM server on the right-hand side. So it's a little bigger, and the reason for that is because I wanted to kind of expand the different use cases. We have new functionality, new features in cloud that allow you to run multiple use cases within a single pane of glass, a single site. I know many customers on-premise that have a BYO scenario, a corporate-owned scenario, and have them separate out to keep everything separate. In cloud, you no longer need to do that. In cloud, we have a feature called Enhanced Enrollment Profiles, and that now allows you to run multiple use cases within the cloud, such as running BYO, a corporate-owned device scenario, user choice. User choice is that pop-up that comes up and says, do you want to enroll, yes or no? As well as running workspace. And last but not least, we fully integrate with Microsoft Endpoint Manager, also called Intune, or previously known as Intune, for your O365 apps. So all these different use cases are available within the cloud under one single pane of glass and one single site, based upon the new functionality features that we've added to cloud. So taking a step further, I'm going to talk about some key points from an infrastructure perspective that you can benefit from moving to cloud with this migration service. So the first thing is, of course, is HA architecture, high availability architecture across the entire board, from the actual servers themselves, CEM servers, to the load balancers as well. Everything inside there is all HA, and we're able to actually do what are called zero downtime reboots and zero downtime upgrades in the cloud, based upon our architecture. So there's, which actually, I didn't hit the next button. We're able to do that just because of the way we're architected. So if we do in cloud, we release every 2 weeks, and during our 2-week release cycle, we're able to do this during business hours. In the middle of you actually working on an environment, be able to do this with what are called rolling reboots and rolling upgrades as well. One thing that we've enhanced in the cloud is a lot of times our customers like to modify settings and server properties, and a lot of these on-premise server properties and settings require a device reboot. Whereas in cloud, you no longer need to restart the service in order to do that. Everything can be done on the fly without needing to restart services. Another big key point from the cloud is all about backups. So we're able to take backups, incremental and daily full backups of the environment. And we actually utilize what's called a cross-cloud platform strategy. So, all of our environment is in Azure. We take those backups and we store them locally, as well as we store them to a different cloud platform altogether, AWS, for example. So in case there is some type of region failure, availability zone failure, we have a backup in a completely different control plane, a completely different cloud platform than your site originally was. And this helps with our redundancy storage. And last but not least, of course, we offer 24/7, 365 monitoring for all of our infrastructure in the cloud. Infrastructure, database, networking, security, API calls, timeouts, everything that we have. And again, one of the reasons why I point out these key points is because a lot of customers today may not be able to handle all these actions that I just talked about, having full HA pair, taking incremental database backups, storing them for 60 or 90 days after, needing to schedule maintenance windows to do upgrades and reboots and things like that. Whereas in cloud, all that's handled by our operations team, and all that in fact is going to have zero to no downtime when you move to cloud. From a monitoring perspective, we in fact break it up into these 3 categories. As you see, infrastructure, performance, and security. Every single thing that you see here, plus more. These are just some top key points here. Our operations team monitors every day. We have on-call engineers every day and protocols to follow if in fact one or more of these metrics are met, or in fact one of these values need to be modified on the fly. So, and with that, I'm going to hand it back over to John to talk a little bit more about our control planes as well as the migration story itself.
Thanks, Justin. I appreciate that. So one of the great benefits of being on the cloud is our elaborate control planes, right? We have so many control planes all around the world, from California all the way over to Sydney. And the cool thing is that when you do choose to migrate to cloud, you have the benefit of choosing the control plane that your instances are going to be hosted on. Now, one thing that we want to mention and we want to stress is that say you are deploying your control plane in Central Europe or West Europe or UAE or whatever the case may be, and you do have users that are miles and miles away. Good example is your instances are in California and you have users that are in Sydney. Application deployment is going to be very quick, right? Because we also take advantage of different CDN technologies that are available to us in the cloud to deploy those applications. So your actual applications are secured within the actual CDN network, our Citrix CDN network, and deployed through that CDN network with a local point of presence, right? So you don't have really a deprecation or of application deployment. Say you're going to deploy an enterprise application, then of course for more your public apps, that's of course going to be pushed out through the way of the public app stores. So that of course is going to leverage the public app store CDNs that are available within those countries. So there's really no degradation of performance, assuming that your instance is deployed in California, and of course you have users available or using the service within Sydney, or again in a faraway land far from, let's say, California, right? So again, those 7 control planes again are options for you. Again, from US East, West, for our Gov customers, we do have those available as well, with exclusive certifications for our Gov customers, because we of course know they need them. And then of course West Europe, UAE North, and so on and so forth. So you get to take your pick here. On our next slide, you'll see that our industry first migration service is easy to get started with, right? Starting with the fact that no re-enrollment is needed. You have the option of moving your environment that is on premise to the cloud, and it's almost seamless, to be honest with you. And Justin on the next couple of slides is going to talk to you about how in details of what happens from a technical standpoint, but it's really just about moving your database from the on-premise environment to the cloud. And you also get to keep your same URLs. So if your users are used to enrolling at companyx.xm.com, for an example, they're going to continue to still enroll with that URL. And there's zero impact to end users. What I love about this particular point here is that you're gonna start the migration process. You're gonna hand over to one of our migration services experts your database in simple high-level terms here. You're gonna be able to test it by a couple DNS modifications that you'll do on your mobile device as a temporary measure, so that you can test that environment and see what it looks like and what it feels like during the migration process. And you're gonna be able to migrate at your own pace, right? Making it very simple and easy to understand exactly what to expect, right? And this is also a good opportunity to possibly reevaluate your existing policies with a more cloud first approach that we have with newer features that are available in the cloud. You get to take advantage of other policies that may not necessarily be available on-prem, but are of course available in the cloud, right? So say for an example, we've seen a lot of customers that are starting to now adopt Chromebooks, especially with working from home being so popular, right? We're seeing that these customers that are migrating to the cloud are now taking advantage of some of those policies that are available, right? And of course, having that cloud first approach makes things really easy. Now, the one big point that I want to mention here is our big purple circle right here in the center, and that it is free with your cloud subscription. So if you have an existing cloud subscription today, this is a service that is free for you. You would have a dedicated migration services expert that would walk you through the process and assist you with this process end to end. And I can't stress how talented these individuals are. Again, they've done, I think, over, and Justin, please keep me honest here, at least over about 150 customers already that have migrated to the cloud, and again, the majority of these customers have just been a seamless transition, right? And one thing that I do want to mention, if you don't want to necessarily go with a copy and paste of your database, you also have the transition option as well, where you say, you know what, I kind of want to reevaluate my policies. I want to possibly change a few things. So when I move my devices from point A to point B, from on-premise to cloud, you also have the option of doing that as well. Where if maybe you're going through a device refresh and you want to just start to slowly move those devices over there, you can do it as well. Again, although we do recommend to forklift your entire environment over to the cloud. Again, it's a simple and easy way to do things. With this industry first migration service, guys, we make it as easy as possible to really make it seamless for your users to have that technology adopted. So moving on to the next slide, we're gonna hand things over to Justin once we talk about the benefits of the cloud in general, right? So you'll see as an on-premise customer, right, you'll have to work, of course, with your certificate management. You'll have to work with upgrades and patches, backups, right, as well as for your server and your database, infrastructure monitoring, infrastructure maintenance, and reboots. All of those are going to be a focus of your administrative staff when you're as an on-premise customer, as well as your licensing. That's one thing you'll have to take a look at. See, the cool thing about, of course, moving to cloud is that our cloud operations team is going to handle a majority of these functions, starting with the upgrades and patches, right? Backups of your server and database, right? Infrastructure monitoring, infrastructure maintenance, reboots, and licensing, right? So one cool thing about the cloud environment is we actually upgrade your environment every 2 weeks. And you're going to notice that a lot of the times, based on the way the infrastructure has been put together, you'll notice that these upgrades are seamless. One day you'll be on version 1, the next day you'll be on version 2, and you'll have those added features that, of course, are needed for the different platform upgrades and different features and security policies that we've developed for you to consume. Right. So one thing that you'll only have to worry about when you move to cloud is just really adopting the service end to end. Right. And that's one good key component there, is that you won't have to necessarily worry about the actual infrastructure itself. Right. Our cloud team, who is dedicated to doing this, are going to work with you end to end to really get all of these listed features for you. So as I mentioned before, I'm going to hand things over to Justin. He's going to talk to you in detail about how that migration workflow, how it works, and how you don't necessarily just hand us a copy of your database. He's going to kind of show you in specific on some of the minor changes that you'll have to make in order to make that happen. Justin?
Yeah, thanks, John. And you mentioned many times seamless and easy and and simple. It's just that's exactly what it is. And so from a high-level overview, I'll kind of explain that and go into a little bit technical details on what's necessary on this move. But you can see here, I'm just going to show you a quick kind of migration flow of how it actually works. So as we discussed prior, the cloud architecture have data plane, control plane separation. On-premise, everything basically goes to your on-premise data center from a CEM perspective, XenMobile perspective. Whereas like I mentioned, now you're going to break out the service in the cloud, and you can have things running simultaneously during test. And ultimately, again, you have that cloud connector, you have Citrix Cloud there to be that control plane between both environments. Like I mentioned before, your cloud connector takes care of 3 primary things: Active Directory access, authenticating as well as authorizing the users. This cloud connector, if you're familiar with it or have other Citrix Cloud services, it's the same cloud connector used for such things as CVAD integration as well, Citrix Virtualized and desktops. The cloud connector also takes care of PKI access. If you have if you have surface authentication, that surface authentication, the CSR request will go through the cloud connector, as well as if in fact you have any type of Zen desktop integration with an on-premise storefront server, that would also get proxied through the cloud connector as well. So from perspective here, like John mentioned, you have your database for on-premise, and all we're really doing is we're just forklifting the database over to cloud. Once you in fact go through that process and validate testing, which I'll explain a little bit, you can ultimately shut down your on-premise servers, and then now you have, from your perspective of control plane, data plane separation, you have that full separation, keeping your on-premise gateway, your Citrix gateway, NetScaler gateway, keeping that intact, same exact URLs, like John mentioned. There'll be no difference there, so your users will still be able to access the same endpoints. And like I said, during this migration, your end users will have no idea they've moved over to cloud, It's very seamless and very painless for your end users as well as your admins. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about this workflow we have. We have it broken into 3 different parts. The first part is what's called an assessment. So John keeps talking about these migration experts. We have a team dedicated to do the migration, and like John mentioned, 150, 200 plus migrations they've done so far. And ultimately, it starts off with an assessment. They go over the environment and say, okay, what does the environment details look like? You know, what version are you running on? To make things easier and to make actual migrations faster and more seamless, we support N-2 for on-premise environments. So the latest is 10.12 on-premise. So we'll support 10.10 and any associated rolling patches from a 10.10 perspective, 10.11, as well as the latest 10.12. All those are supported to move to cloud. We talk about some of the use cases as well. You know, we go over, hey, what devices are you using? What devices do you want to use in cloud? You know, which extra third-party components are you integrated with? What are you not? And that kind of goes into some of the limitations as well as the expectations of the cloud. You know, limitations are there's not a lot of limitations there. And some of the limitations that the customers you know, ask about are 2. One of them is in fact syslog integration. In the cloud, we do not support syslog integration, but we do have open REST APIs that are available to download logs intermittently or at a timely manner that can be imported into your on-premise log analysis tool. And of course, you know, one of the other limitations is the direct access to the database. Since the database has now moved to cloud and we're behind multiple layers of security and firewalls, direct access to a database is no longer available. For those customers that have advanced queries they're running for auditing purposes and things like that, we are getting ready to release what's called a reporting service. That's basically going to give you that same granular control as you had on premise having direct database access in the cloud as well, all based upon reporting service APIs. And then again, some of the prereqs we discussed. You know, one of the main prereqs is making sure that, of course, you have your cloud subscription all set up, have that Citrix account all set up, as well as at least 2 or more cloud connectors set up in your resource location on-premise. You know, the next step is once you have all that done. Again, it seems like a lot, but it's really not that many prereqs. That this whole assessment guide, we have an entire PDF to go through a checklist for, just making sure that you understand what's working currently when you move to cloud, making sure it still works, and no regressions, and everything's the same. That's part of our assessment guideline that this team does. The next thing is all about connectivity. You know, once you in fact provide the prereqs, the database itself, you know, we go and we spin up a new cloud environment with your on-premise data inside there, making sure the cloud connector is set up correctly, making sure that your Citrix gateway is reconfigured properly, and so forth. And then last but not least, we do what's called the validation period. The idea of the validation period is you can actually, we have the architecture in the cloud that you can actually run an active on-premise environment still, keeping all your end users active, and also an active cloud environment as well. And we call this test drive. And what you can do is we have a cloud-hosted DNS server that can host your DNS and point to the cloud-hosted IP addresses. So if you in fact want to test this in parallel, which definitely highly recommend, you want to test this in parallel with iOS devices, Android, Windows devices. You in fact can change your mobile device's IP address and point your DNS server to our cloud-hosted IP, and you can actually enroll in cloud under the same URL you have on premise and be able to run them in parallel to make sure that everything is in fact working, all the devices working as expected, all the policies, apps, and everything is in fact still there before you in fact make that DNS switch over. And like John explained a few slides ago, you know, you keep the same URL, so that means that everything is basically controlled by DNS. Since you're still going to own the certificates on the gateway as well as the server itself, and all of the URLs are the same, once you in fact validate everything is good, you give the migration service team a heads up and say, hey, I'm ready to go. We provide you the public IP addresses for cloud, and you make a DNS switch over on your DNS side, and then all the devices then route over to cloud with little to no end user interruption. Again, they won't even know they're moved. From an admin perspective, of course, you'll know you're moved because you'll have more functionality, more features, more policies, more supported endpoints in cloud that you did on premise. So overall, we've done migrations for customers in as little as 72 hours. But again, since the validation is on your end, is on the customer end. You can do 72 hours. You could spend 2-3 weeks testing everything out. Again, it's all up to you because you control your own DNS server, so you let us know when you're ready for switch over. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move over. John talked about some of the actual infrastructure benefits of the cloud. I'm going to talk about some of the actual the functionality feature benefits of once you move to cloud, what can you actually access now? So of course, extended support endpoint. John and myself have talked to this many times, but the Chrome OS, the Windows 10 modern management, Alexa for Business, the Workspace Hub. There's so many extra endpoints that we in fact support. The Android Enterprise, all the Android Enterprise modes, the iOS 13's user enrollment modes. All those in fact are benefits of cloud. It doesn't mean that some of those things are not going to be backward to on-premise. They definitely will be. But again, based upon that cloud first model, they're going to get them in cloud. And also the extended feature sets. There's probably closer to 100+ policies in cloud that are not in on-premise, which is a great thing, especially from the extra extended endpoints, the Chrome OS, the modern management Windows 10, and the Alexa for Business, Workspace Hub, and things like that. Again, John mentioned this as well, and John talked about this in detail. It's a minimal operations effort. You don't have to worry about taking backups, doing upgrades, maintenance, rolling patches, security, locking down your environment every single time a new release comes out. You let the operations team handle that. You can now focus on expanding these use cases, expanding the extended feature sets you're going to be able to receive in the cloud. You'll have that time on your hands to look into that instead of worrying about, am I in the latest and greatest version? Is my gateway up to date? With the latest patches and things like that. You'll have the operations team to handle that. And of course, based upon the subscription that you have, you also have seamless integration with other cloud services. The workspace as a whole, your CVAS workspace solution, the analytics, your access control, your mobile SSO, the gateway service as well. You have the capability of integrating, when you move to cloud, everything into a seamless look and feel with the your Citrix workspace licenses. And then last but not least is we have also seamless integration with other third-party cloud services. Like I mentioned in my slide against the different use cases in the cloud, we fully integrate the endpoint management service in the cloud with Office 365 applications via your Microsoft Endpoint Manager solution. We integrate with mobile threat detection software and have partnered with 4 or 5 different companies to provide that in cloud and provide that seamless interaction. As well as being able to integrate with OEM configs, the Samsung side, the Zebra side, the Honeywell side, things like that that we're either currently rolling out or currently support from an OEM config perspective. So as you see, moving to the cloud, you have many benefits, and also taking advantage of this free migration service, you have the ability to move to the cloud seamlessly, don't have to worry about reconfiguration, and you have a dedicated migration expert there by your side walking you through the process and actually doing all the hard work for you. And again, the best part is, like John mentioned, it's free. If you have an active cloud subscription, you have an on-premise environment, you can move to cloud for free and get the benefits of everything. And again, your end users, no re-enrollment needed, and your end users won't know. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand off to back to John to kind of wrap things up and talk about, what's next, what are the next steps, what are some more docs I can access. And there is one handout, a PDF comparing on-premise to cloud, high-level features, definitely not technical in-depth like I mentioned here, but some high-level features of what the difference are between on-premise and cloud. But there are many resources out there, as well as many videos out there to get started with this migration service. So John, I'll hand it back up to you to wrap things up.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it, Justin. So really, what are some action items that I can take after this webinar? So definitely review the migration services docs. You'll see that we have a URL there for you guys to review that and kind of see what more about our assessment guide and kind of what happens end to end with respect to the migration. Again, it's going to go into detail of exactly what we discussed here today. Definitely a way of reviewing and getting a great understanding of what the migration service is going to provide you. And then I definitely would advise you guys to check out our What's New docs. You'll see that those docs are updated about every 2 weeks or so with our releases to cloud every 2 weeks. You're of course going to see those docs consistently updated. One thing to also mention is that you can kind of enroll yourself into an RSS feed that's on that page. highly recommend that, again, so you don't have to kind of go to the site every single time. You'll just get a small ping on your favorite RSS feed, or a feed reader, I should say. And then also, if you're looking to move to cloud and already own a cloud subscription, definitely you want to talk to your Citrix account team, right? So if you don't necessarily have a cloud subscription, our Citrix, your Citrix account team can definitely help you get a subscription that can enable you to have this service for free. If you already have a cloud subscription and you're definitely looking to move to cloud, you can schedule a meeting with a migration services expert by way of your Citrix account team. So definitely keep that in mind. Again, guys, if you have a cloud subscription service, this service is absolutely free for you to take advantage of, right? Move to cloud, it's seamless, all right? It's a cool and simple transition. We've done about 100 plus, I wanna say definitely way over 100. I think we're actually at the 200 mark, if I'm not mistaken, of many of our different customers that were on premise that just definitely wanna take advantage of some of the features that are available in cloud, right? And again, think about the great benefits that you'll have, especially when you're leveraging the workspace, right? If you want to bring that end-to-end zero trust story together, you'll definitely want to move things over to the cloud with Citrix Endpoint Management. With that, I think we're going to open it up for Q&A, and I think we do have quite a few questions on the queue, Justin, if I'm not mistaken here.
Yeah, we do. Thanks, John. Thanks for wrapping that up. So,
of course.
I'm just kind of making notes of some of the questions here. So one of the questions is we always get this, and I'm surprised it hasn't happened 4 or 5 times. And the questions is, you keep mentioning the migration is free, but of course, free is a very, very bold word there. Are there any restrictions around it or gotchas on there? And of course, the idea of the subscription being free there, it is free. The move to cloud is free. Some of the restrictions and gotchas would be like I mentioned, we support N-2 for on-premise. So let's say you're running an older 10.6, 10.8 on-premise version, you don't feel comfortable upgrading, you need some hand-holding. The migration team is, like you said, almost 200 migrations done at this point. We can provide guidance, we can provide docs, we can provide videos, but if you need that type of hand-holding from there, we do have partners that can be looped in. We do have consulting services available and things like that. So, if in fact the migration itself, like if you're on 10.10 or later, definitely the team will do all the work for you. But if in fact you're on an earlier version, you may need help, spinning up a maybe you're an MDM only and you want to bring a gateway involved. You need help spinning up a gateway, on-premise IPing and VLANing and stuff like that. Those are things that, of course, are out of scope of the migration service. But if we're talking, apples to apples, from what you have currently on premise today to cloud, it's definitely totally free. The migration service experts will walk you through that process. So, definitely this is something that if you meet all the requirements, which 99.9% of our customers do, definitely free.
Awesome. It's almost you want to consider these additional services that are out of the scope of the migration service if you're not necessarily to our most common configuration and common supported standard, right? So just kind of have like an older implementation, right, Justin?
Yep, exactly. Yep.
Got it. Looks like we have another question here. Can I use my existing on-premise gateway when I move to the cloud, or do I need a new one?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I should have covered that a little more in my connectivity slide. So the gateway itself, your gateway virtual server, your FQDM for your NetScaler gateway, that will remain the same. If in fact you want to do full end-to-end testing, we do require another gateway to be spun up, a VPX, simple VPX to be spun up, so we can keep the data traffic separate between your on-premise environment that's currently active and live and running, compared to doing your cloud testing. If in fact you just want to test basic MV enrollment, policy push, app push, console push, you don't need another gateway. But if you want to do the full MDM plus MAM plus micro VPN test all that in cloud, you will need a separate gateway because we want to keep that data separate and not interrupt your current on-premise environment.
All right.
Hope that answer your question.
All right.
Next question. One thing you didn't talk about is what is your cloud service SLA? And that's a great question. Yep. Currently right now, we do have all of our SLA documentation publicly available, what meets our SLA, what doesn't, and so forth. We've talked about our database backup strategy, what we keep, how long we keep it for, and so forth. Our publicly documented SLA is 99.5%, and that is across all Citrix Cloud services, not just CEM. So, and it is all publicly documented on our documentation site, what's covered under, let's say, what's not, and so forth like that.
Perfect. All right, I think we got another one here. Let's see here. With so many people working from home, can endpoint management be used to reset the locally cached password on the local machine when a user resets their Active Directory password instead of connecting to the VPN? And I think you may have to have AAD connected with Citrix Endpoint Management to do that. Justin, you want to expand on that a little more?
Yeah, you could use Azure Active Directory. This primary use case is definitely one of the. It's not a use case that is typically covered by an MDM vendor solution. You have the direct VPN connection. You could launch a virtual desktop or publish desktop in that case. But for the most part, I'm probably just going to say it's best off to utilize a different solution than an actual MDM vendor or CEM specifically to reset your password through there. We have other means. Citrix has other means, but this part specifically, not a valid use case for that.
All right.
Okay. Are there any details available? Which Android enterprise features are supported available on premise compared to cloud? And as you saw there was a handout there as far as cloud to on-premise. So from an on-premise perspective, and even what John mentioned before, from a cloud perspective, we are cloud first. So any type of Android enterprise mode, whether it's one of the device owner, work profile, COSU, COPE, whatever mode you're looking for, they'll be in cloud first. But we have made a promise to our on-premise customers too, because this is considered a platform feature, the way you're enrolling and the way you're accessing the platform, we will in fact backport all of those functionalities from both an Android perspective as well as the user enrollment, iOS 13's user enrollment perspective, to on-premise. Of course, you're going to have them much sooner in cloud and much faster in cloud, and be able to take advantage of a lot of those Android enterprise policies that may not be backported to on-premise, but the overall enrollment mode itself will eventually be backported. Right now, as John, I believe you mentioned it, we are upgrading about every 2 weeks in cloud, whereas on-premise we have rolling patches every couple of quarters, but we're down to releasing a 2 full versions a year.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that. You took the words right out of my mouth, and yes, that's absolutely correct.
Perfect. So you may be waiting 4 to 6 months to get a specific Android enterprise mode that you want, or an iOS user enroll mode you want, but in cloud, they're going to be first, and they're going to be available much sooner and much quicker than your on-premise environments. So
absolutely, and with all this tailors really to the availability of the microservices that are available and how the cloud infrastructure was built, right? With the existing way that we have within our CI/CD pipeline, it just makes the feature deployment so much quicker to get together and actually deploy within the cloud.
Exactly. So, yep. So there's one question I want to address, and we may have caused a little confusion on even answering that first question we asked was, does endpoint management migration also require full adoption of Azure AD, or does it work with on-premise AD structure? So, and and the answer is no. You don't have to be fully Azure AD at all. You don't even have to have Azure AD. The idea of that cloud connector component I talked to you about, that cloud connector is installed on a Windows domain joined machine, and that is your proxy from any cloud service into your on-premise Active Directory. So it's going to take that secure ticketing tunnel through, and it's going to allow you to access your on-premise Active Directory for authentication, authorization, your search, your domain membership, and such like that.
PKI as well. Any PKI requests?
Yeah, PKI server-based authentication as well. We do fully support Azure AD integration for MD enrollment and such. It is a supported method. Doesn't mean it is, but it's not a requirement to move to cloud. You can completely be on-premise 100% from a Microsoft Active Directory standpoint, and even an Exchange standpoint, and still move to cloud with no concerns and no worries. So.
One thing I also want to add to that is that you may think, oh, well, with this cloud connector, maybe I have to open up a bunch of ports on my on-premise environment, have a bunch of pinholes. Nope. That's also not the case. Everything is shot out port 443. The only thing you'll have to keep in mind is that if you do have a web proxy, because the majority of these calls are web calls over HTTPS, right? You'll have to kind of whitelist a couple of URLs that your cloud connector is going to need to call. In the event, of course, you do have a web proxy that's on premise, limiting your users' access to several sites for security reasons. So hope that helps answer your question. I have a good one here. Let's see here. Can I use the migration service to keep my enrollment URL, but want to use the gateway service instead of on-premise gateway?
Yep, a good question. So the short answer is, or the easy answer is no. You know, if in fact you want to move to cloud, like I said, moving to cloud without any type of user interruption at all would be an apples to apples move. So if you currently have an on-premise gateway and you want to move to cloud, sticking with that on-premise gateway is your best bet. If you move to the gateway service, again, the gateway service currently right now for CEM is in tech preview. So you definitely don't want to go from a fully GA environment to a tech preview environment, moving to cloud. Definitely don't recommend that. But if in fact you're interested in the gateway service, you know, we can spin you up another, you know, trial site to kind of get an idea of how the gateway service works and what advantages it has over the on-premise gateway. You know, again, if you have something that's currently working, definitely don't recommend a move, especially since gateway service still requires that on-premise connector to be installed. So it's not like you're removing an on-premise component if you move the gateway service. You still have to have that gateway service similar to what the cloud connector does, that proxy. You still have to have that installed with your on-premise environment. So the answer is no, but you can eventually make that move if you want to after the migration. Definitely don't want to do it during the migration. And just remember, you still have that on-premise component to work with if that's your main concern. Okay, so question, one of the last questions, we're kind of shooting short on time, but okay, are customers notified of upgrades? And the answer is yes. We do notify customers of upgrades. We provide usually about since we're on a 2-week cycle or release cycle, we usually release or we usually notify customers about a week or so, a little over, before we do the upgrade, and also provide them our hidden docs of what's new, so you kind of get an idea of what's going to be available when that upgrade does happen. So it's not like, and the one difference between cloud, since we're on that 2-week release cycle compared to on-premise being, you know, previously last year quarterly, now bi-yearly, is the idea of 2 weeks is to move things smaller, just fixes, you know, bug fixes, you know, patches, 1 or 2 enhancements here or there. When you move to cloud, you're not going to get, in every single 2 weeks, you're not going to get 50 or 60 new features like you do on-premise, you know, having it spun up on that quarterly, you know, release. You're only going to get maybe 1, maybe 2. Sometimes there'll be releases that are just, you know, customer bug fixes and patches and things like that, resiliency, redundancy things. It doesn't mean you're always going to get a feature. So, you know, don't think that every single 2 weeks, all of a sudden you're going to, you know, you're going to log in every 2 weeks and have 10, 20 new policies. The idea of moving to cloud is being, you know, more of like an incremental rollout of features, functionality, and so forth. So, and that's a good question. It's usually a question I get a lot of times is, you know, hey, you know, if I move to cloud, you know, I'm not in control when I'm updated. I don't want all of a sudden to log into one day and get a surprise of having 50 new policies and having to, you know, having a new enrollment method. It's not like that, which is great. We do smaller upgrades, and we're not going to. The more we push towards you on a 2-week cycle, the more chances you have of regression and things like that. So the idea of cloud is to prevent that, as well as make your upgrade process seamless, and, you know, and not have to worry about it as much. I hope that answered your question.
So I think we're nearly at time. Are there maybe one more question, or have we answered them all now?
There is one more that I skipped and actually wanted to cover that right after I answered that question. So from a tech support perspective, you know, when you move to cloud, do things change from a tech support perspective? You know, how you get support, and the answer is no. No, the same tech support team here at Citrix that handles your on-premise environment would still handle your cloud environment. They have extra resources and have direct contact with our cloud operations team to handle cases that come in with cloud that may have some infrastructure issues or whatnot that you're worried about. It's the same exact process. So you'd still call up, you know, your tech support, whether you have a tech support contact, a technical relationship manager, or TAM, you're opening up a Citrix.com e-service one, you saw the capabilities of going through that route as well. There's no difference in the way that you get support, handle support.
Great. Okay, I think that's all we have time for. Thank you everybody for joining today. I will be sharing the recording with you in a couple of days with a follow-up email, but please do feel free to reach out to any of us if you have any questions that haven't been answered today. Many thanks, and have a good rest of your day.
Have a good day, everyone. Thank you.